Hello everyone, today we are looking at the syma x8hw. There are 3 different versions of this. This is the one that does Wi-Fi FPV, and it has a 1 megapixel camera. It's still titled as HD, but we'll have to take a look at that. This is a pretty large box. One of its separating features is the ability to hold its hovering position. It doesn't have a GPS or anything like that, so it's going to have to do that by other means. You can also see down here on the bottom where it lists some additional features, and then it has multiple languages here on the bottom. It does use 4 AA batteries, and that's kind of interesting. We'll take a look at that because it's actually, the compartment's made for 6, but you only need 4. And then we've got the scan codes we can use for the syma app that we'll need for our phones in order to do the Wi-Fi FPV. You can see the dimensions here. It's a pretty big unit. It's 500 by 500. Its height is 190 millimeters, and it runs on a 7.4 volt 2000 milliamp LiPo, which should give us a pretty good run time. It does do flips and stunts. We'll have to find out if it does that with the camera plugged in or if we have to unplug the camera or not. So let's take a look at the unit. I have taken everything out of the box. This is everything that we get. We can see we have the landing legs, the prop guards, 2 sets of props. So that's nice. And they are self-tightening or locking props. We have our USB adapter, extra locking mechanisms and spinners, and a bright orange screwdriver. And then we have our sets of screws, probably for our landing gear and our prop guards. And then we have the controller, and the controller is quite big for an RTF unit. You can see that this altitude hold is probably a feature of the controller, not necessarily something within the flight controller, because that is a spring-loaded throttle. So we'll have to see how that works. And then we have an LCD here on the middle. We also have our holder that goes on the controller to hold our phone just in here, and that's pretty standard for these Wi-Fi FPV units. We have our HD camera with a locking mechanism and then our plug. Remember, this HD is 1 megapixel. And then we have the syma x8hw itself, and you can see where we have lights here on the top that appear to show through. And then on the bottom we also have some substantial lights down there. So we should be able to see this thing fairly easily at night. We also have an on-off switch, which I like that. And inside, let's turn it over so it's properly oriented. We have our battery. Again, this is a 2000 milliamp battery with a balance plug. As it says right there. And has nice silicone wires. It's not the vinyl or plastic coated. And here you can see the connectors here. This compartment feels like it's not going to house a much larger battery, but possibly slightly larger. You can see in the top, hopefully, that there is a little bit of a gap, but not much. It's pretty snug. You're probably better off just staying with this size battery. Our charger here, looks like we have 2 lights. We have power, and then we have charging and charged. There's our balance lead, which it plugs into, and then this plugs into the wall, and inside this box is our wall outlet. Because I'm here in the US, so I have this plug. That plugs right in there, this into the wall, and we're all set to charge. Inside this box is also one key piece that, if we get over here to the English language, we see that calibration is done via both sticks down and to the right. So if you crash, you probably need to recalibrate, get hung up in a tree or land upside down or anything like that. You're probably going to need to calibrate before your next flight. Keep that in mind. It does come with a nice manual here, and it has multiple pages. Gives us all the information you need if this is your first machine. It also gives us the parts and part numbers that we can look for if we have any damage. And then we have a nice little exploded diagram here at the bottom and the dimensions. Let's get this assembled and take another look. First thing we'll do here is we'll take our controller and mount our Wi-Fi, which is very straightforward. You just simply slide it down over the top, press it down all the way. And it has a locking mechanism so it won't rotate on you. Just put your phone in there. We're all set. On the back side we need to add our batteries. And you can see here they've inserted some foam on 2 battery positions, and I believe those are either glued or has some stickiness of some sort to make sure you don't pull those out. Because you only need 4 and there's no battery tabs in there to accept power. So while you might be able to store extra batteries there, I don't think there's any value in that. So it's nice it only takes 4, it doesn't take 6. Some of these really stack on some batteries, and you also have a lanyard hold if you want to use the neck strap. To install the prop guards, you simply pull out these little space fillers, and they're just pressure fitted in there. You can see they pop in and out, so that's a nice little feature that they've got there. Makes it real convenient if you don't want to have the prop guards. I don't see where there would be any. If you didn't want even to carry this little bit of weight, you could fly without these just fine. I'm just going to leave these in here for the time being, and I'm not going to put the prop guards on at this time. Let's take a look at the landing gear. Should be pretty straightforward. We have a hole here in the bottom. We have 2 screw ports. Put the landing gear in, then we'll add our screws. Because we want to use the wide-headed screws, I recommend go ahead and putting the screws in the legs, because that's a very narrow gap. You'll probably need to use a pair of needle nose in order to put those in there, and then we can secure them down. While we have the belly exposed, let's take a look at the motors. And I've already removed screws from here and here. There's just the 2 holding this bottom pod in. We remove that. And we can see that the motors have plugs, so they're not hardwired in or anything of that nature. And we can also see the size of the motor. It's a fairly substantial brushed motor, so it should have plenty of torque and power. And motor replacement will be quite simple when you just purchase a new one and you plug it back in. While we have the motor pod replaced, let's go ahead and install the camera. This is the rear with the battery compartment. And we have our plug. It goes directly into this port. And this simply slides into the holding mechanism. If you need to release, there's a button here on the back. We press down on this button and we slide it forward. So this button is the locking mechanism. As you can see, as I press on it, this locking mechanism goes down. Let's move on to the propellers. Now let's put our propellers on. This should be quite simple. Propellers, they're quite large. They're actually kind of flexible, so I think that while this won't make for fast changing in direction, I'm sure it makes these very durable. So it is my understanding, now that we have the block blade out, we just pop this down on here, slides down nice and easy. Put this back in place. There's a little tiny pin here. And we have extras in this bag in case you drop one on the floor and it goes bye-bye. And we just put it right inside this hole, spread it evenly, and then inside here is a little twist locking mechanism. We turn that, lock it down, and we put our spinner on, which doesn't feel like it goes down all the way. That's it. That's as far as down as it goes. But the blade's locked in place, and that's what we care about most. So we do that 4 more times. Alright, so it looks pretty good. We've got all the blades on. And if anybody was curious about the blades, if you pay close attention, you'll see that we have a B here. It's upside down in our view. And we have an A here. And on the blades themselves, hopefully I can grab 2 that are marked. See where it says B1 and A2. That tells us exactly where they need to go. So you don't actually, if you're new to quads, this kit will tell you exactly how to assemble the propellers. You don't have to know that all the motors should be rotating in towards the nose and in towards the rear. But that's how quads work. That's how they rotate and their propulsion system set up. But if you get a little confused, they are clearly marked. So it looks pretty cool. I like it. It's a hardy unit. It actually, surprisingly, it probably seems really big in the camera view. and it's sizable, but it's probably about the size of a Phantom, and it seems like it's probably lighter than my last experience with a Phantom, but it's really pretty rigid and solid. So combine that with flexible blades, and I think we're going to have a pretty durable little unit. We should note that the camera and the mount does have some vibration dampening inside of it. So you can see there, it's got some wiggle movement in there, all the way around. You can't really make what it is because it's down inside of there. And something I didn't cover initially is that it does come with an SD card. It comes with a 4 GB SD card. It has the H on there, which I think is supposed to indicate a high speed. I don't know whether that's class 10 or what class it actually is. And we also have some ventilation up here to keep the camera components from overheating. And it seems to be a fairly small field of view, but we'll test that. It kind of has a downward angle a little bit, and let's see if we can change that a little bit. Loosen the screws here a bit. Doesn't seem to want to change angles, so let's go ahead and take it apart and see if it's even a possibility. Normally when a camera has angles it can change. It's got a system where you'll hear it click as you move it, and I don't feel that here. No, it does look like it's going to have a pretty static. If you look at that square, you can see that it's slightly angled, and that goes right into these slots that are also square. So the angle is going to be fixed, but we do have the vibration dampening. Let's take a closer look at the remote here. I've put the 4 batteries required inside. We turn it on, we get the flashing blue light, we go up, down, it thinks we're bound, and then that activates the LCD screen down here at the bottom. We have our signal. It tells us we're in mode 1, so we'll need to switch that. It tells us our battery levels. It also tells us our stick positions and our trim positions as well. Let's just do a bit of trimming here just to see. So we get the beeps, and it does take quite a few to get the LCD to change there. Oh, solid beep indicates center. On our stick travel, you can see that it shows us where we're at with our sticks, and in the center we get the right stick. This shows us in mode 1, but this LCD indicates with our yaw that we're actually in mode 2. Also, we have the rate button here. We have 2 rates, high and low, and this button also indicates the headless function. So 2 beeps is the high rate, 1 beep is low. If we hold it in, we're in headless mode. And then that's when we go out of headless mode. On this side is the flip button, and then you press it in direction and it rolls or flips in that direction. This is in mode 1, and switching between modes should be relatively easy. It says in the manual to press the B button to the right. There's no label in the manual as to what the B button is, but I'm going to assume it's this one. So we're going to press this to the right, turn it on, there's our loud beep, and it switched to mode 2. So let's say you received yours in mode 2 and you want to fly in mode 1. Turn it back off. Now we're back in mode 1. So easy mode switching, nice little feature. Let's go out and fly. Okay, we're out here going to do a range test on the Syma x8hw. Need to get my phone set up, but that fence all the way down there is about 165 yards. So we are going to check to see what we can get out of this. lost it now. It's about where that hill is that goes down. So FPV's gone. Let's see how far. I can't quite tell how far that is. I can barely see the thing. I'm going to start to bring it down a little bit. That might be across the street. It's just in front of the fence. I'm going to bring it down and land it. Now let's go see how far that is.
As we get to the quad, that we find that we're not quite as close to the fence as I'd originally thought, but I could barely see the quad itself. We pace off about 11 steps, so that ends up being about 6 meters from the fence, so about 160 meters of tested range, and we still had control. Now I'm just going to fly it back, going to fly it towards the ground camera, have a little fun while I'm out. It's actually a nice day. There's not too much of a breeze, sunny, but a little bit of clouds. I have some more footage I'll show you at the end, and that is not as nice because there's smoke all over the neighborhood from all the fireworks, and it's overcast, and it's raining off and on during the day, kind of misty air. Overall, you know, I'm impressed with the FPV. When you get yourself out away from where you have interference from home Wi-Fi and other things, the FPV works pretty well. I would estimate on the range of the FPV you get all of the 30 meters advertised. And the nice thing is that it will continue to record even when you lose the FPV on your screen. The image quality isn't too bad, but you are recording at 20 frames per second. Even though it has a resolution of 720p, it's not what we've come to know as high definition. The bit rate is substantially lower than 720p. You cannot do any flips and rolls with the camera attached, so you see here in a minute or two I go ahead and land it and I remove the camera. The altitude hold feature works surprisingly well. You can just take your hand off the sticks and it will take its last height and hold it. Sometimes it bobs slightly if you're watching real closely, but for the most part it stays where you left it. Getting used to the altitude hold feature because it's always on. Your first flight or two, it's going to feel a little weird because with that spring-loaded stick, it doesn't go down. You have to press it down, and you have to hold it down if you want to continue to descend. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Your first few flights, it's going to feel a little awkward, but overall, I thought the feature worked pretty well, and you can get used to the fact that it doesn't descend with that spring-loaded throttle quite like it does normally. The controller feels pretty nice in your hands. I did initially in the video review talk about the controller was in mode 1 and I switched it to mode 2. But you're actually in mode 1 when it says mode 2 and you're in mode 2 when it says mode 1. So in order to do this flying, I actually needed to switch it back over to what the screen says is mode 1. You see that I've removed the camera now and I'm just going to do some flying around. This ground footage isn't great because I get out of frame quite a bit, but it does give us a pretty good visual of how the quad flies. I like how it sounds. It sounds very almost Harley Davidson like in the motorcycle round. Sounds powerful. Sounds like it's going to give us lots of propulsion. And yes, I have crashed it a number of times, and it has just come back for more. I haven't had any problems with any sort of damage to the quad. The two halves of the shell came slightly apart, and I just popped it back together. I didn't even take any screws out. I just wedged a key in there, of all things, and pushed it back in. I've got some scuff marks on the spinners. I do suggest you leave the spinners on That will take some of the strain off the motor stems. I think if you're in the market for this sort of quad, this is a good flyer. The flips and the rolls are going to gain some altitude before they do them, and it probably has a lot to do with the fact that this is not a small, light quad. This is a quad you're going to be able to fly in a pretty good breeze. Do a little example of a punch out there. It does take right off. The camera doesn't necessarily give you a great feel for what kind of thrust it does have. That was just a fireworks. There wasn't a drive-by.
Now we got LVC.
The LVC warning is kind of long. Yeah, I believe it's almost 2 minutes, or between 1:30 and 2 minutes. But you can still fly it around with LVC quite well. It does limit your height, which I show here in a minute. And it keeps you at about 20 to 25 feet in the air. It says in the manual that that's a safe height to be at with LVC. I never crashed it from that height, but that seems like, you know, it's going to fall pretty hard from that height. It does reach a point of the LVC where it actually lands itself.
It actually came down a little bit. I'd say it's probably about 20, 25 feet. That's as high as she'll let us go for LVC.
If you're in the market for a quad that has the ability to record video as also doing a little bit of sport flying, and if you have the space, this seems like a perfectly good quad. It's going to be robust. It's going to take, if you're just learning, it's going to take a few crashes. You won't be running out for parts all the time. It does come with extra propellers, and you can also put the prop guards on to help protect those propellers if you wish. Landing gear seemed fine. I was a little bit worried about it being flimsy, but after a number of crashes, I didn't have any landing gear bend or anything of that nature. Flight times are going to vary depending upon whether you're doing the camera recording or not. You'll get somewhere between 5 to 7 minutes, just as advertised on the box. If you count the LVC, you'll probably get another minute to 90 seconds.
Altitude hold still works whenever you let off.
If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the section down below. I'll put links to the product below. I'll leave you with some more flight footage of the cloudy, smoky day out in front of the house with the head cam. This is the review of the syma x8hw, and I thank you for watching.